just because you grew up in a certain environment, just because you were surrounded by certain people, you can still love your family, but understand that you want a different path, or, you want to be the one to break the cycle. You do have agency. You can, change your life. You can, especially in America where economic and social mobility is possible, really, kind of end up on the right side of this system. You just got to kind of act.
Welcome to Speak Up. It's your favorite host, Anthony Scaramucci, but I have your favorite guest on, backed by popular demand, and now a best-selling author on top of everything else is Anthony Pompliano, also known as the Pomp. Pomp is the founder and CEO of Professional Capital Management, entrepreneur, investor, blockchain explainer, blockchain investor, venture capitalist. And the title of the new book is How to Live an Extraordinary Life. And Pomp, first of all, I love the cover, but secondarily, I read the book. It was a very quick read, by the way. So for those of you that are listening, the book is an easy read, lots of great information, lots of lessons. And Pomp, there's a lot of different things I love about the book, but one of the things I love the most, you can start anywhere in the book and go anywhere in the book. And so I think you wrote a book for our time, which is basically people have limited attention spans, as we both know. And you're like, how am I going to get people content that they're going to digest quickly? And that's this book. So I want to start there, if you don't mind. And then we're going to go into some other things. Why this book? Why now? And let's start there.
Well, I'll tell you the true story why I wrote the book. Everyone else, I tell them I started writing the letters for my kids. 1 turned into 2, turned into 4, turned into 8. Next thing you know, I was like, I should publish this as a book. But obviously, the reason why I wrote the book is because my wife wrote a best-selling book, and I need to sell just one more copy than her. So anybody who feels bad for me should go buy the book so I can accomplish my mission of selling one more than my wife.
Paulina sold a lot of books. She also wrote a great book, and I interviewed Paulina.
I know. That's why I'm on here, is because you helped her, so now you got to help me.
Yeah, but no, I don't need to help you, Pomp. You're doing a great job selling these books. My staff gets mad at me when I say I buy my own books, but that is partially true. Let's put it that way. But no, I did sell some books as well. So there are basically 65 letters in here. And you're saying that they're letters to your children, but I felt like it was a letter to me. And so I felt like I was reading the book and said, okay, this is something I need to know. And behind you are 2 busts of Warren Buffett and the reincarnation of Benjamin Franklin, Charlie Munger. So a lot of this is Ben Franklin-esque. And so have you read his autobiography, Ben Franklin's autobiography? Where does a 36-year-old guy get this depth perception? Because there's no way I could have written this book when I was 36. I mean, I'm probably closer to writing this book as I turn on my way to 70. But this is a book that an older soul has written. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of insights or learnings in life come from different experiences. And, whether it was intentional or not, I've had the good fortune of having many different experiences, everything from, playing sports in college, serving in the military, building companies, investing in companies, traveling, having a lot of different relationships, meeting a lot of people, interviewing a lot of people. You just got to pick up, different lessons. And one of the things I say in the book in the beginning is, when I was growing up, I, for whatever reason, never thought I was going to live past the age of 35. And I think it was just, I kind of lived, a fast life. I was a young guy who was having a lot of fun. And I just felt like I had to cram a lot of stuff into the beginning of my life. But also I began to realize that kind of no idea is new. And so if you just listen, you get to meet all these great people, just listen to what they say and write some of it down. And so many of the letters, almost all of the letters came from, I have an Apple Note on my phone where when I would learn something, I would just write it down. And so over time, it became obvious, hey, how did I learn this thing? How do I apply it in my life? And, hopefully I can pass it on to my kids or other people. But I really just look at myself as kind of a vessel for that idea who, somebody told me. And so how fortunate am I to be able to go tell somebody else?
You see, so it's interesting. When I read the book, I was thinking about what I say to my kids. And so there's only 2 things that I can say to my kids. And I have 5 of them. I think you've met some of them. Number one, and this is on page 95 of your book. I dog eared it because I think it's so seminal. Is that you have to share in the success of your friends, and that you want to be the first call. So if someone gets into Harvard and after they get done calling their mom, you want to be that second call. Or if they've made $1 billion on a recent IPO, or they've done something, they scored a Nobel Prize. I don't know what it is. Whatever it is, I tell my kids, you want to share the successes of your friends, and you want to be there for them in good times and bad. It's hard for people sometimes. There's an envy gene somewhere in our personalities. It's like maybe it's primordial. We saw somebody with a bigger cave. We want to go over there, hit him in the head with a rock, and take the cave, right? And so it could be primordial, but if you can transcend that, you can be very, very happy. You write that on page 95. The other thing I tell my kids, I can't tell you what to do, and I certainly don't want to impose what I like doing on you, but you better find something you like doing and just go do that. That's the key, because then you're never working a day in your life. And so you've got both those things. Where did you learn that from? Is that something that you knew intuitively, or is that something that your mom told you, or your dad, or where'd you get that from?
No, I think in terms of, my dad used to say some version of like, look, I don't care what you do, just like make sure you work hard at it. And, tangential to that, I remember my father always telling me and all my brothers, you can literally do anything you want in the world. Kind of this idea of, I recently saw somebody, somebody tweeted and said, I recently learned you can just do things in life. Like you just decide to do it and you just go do it. And so I think that is, an important lesson. But somebody recently was interviewing me and they asked me, what is the common theme throughout the book? And it made me think, I didn't kind of set out with a master plan of all the different letters, but the thing that I think is shared across them all is just we have agency. And I think we live in a world where we're constantly being told the world is acting upon you. There's this like victim kind of mindset. People, are always thinking about woe is me, or I can't, control my own life. And a lot of the letters just feed back into this idea that like you do have agency. You can, change your life. You can, especially in America where economic and social mobility is possible, really, kind of end up on the right side of this system. You just got to kind of act. And so if a couple people take that away from the book, that would be a great success in my opinion.
Pomp, you're an optimist. You're a congenital optimist, though. I feel like you were born optimistic. What do you, and if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong, but what do you say to somebody who, I don't know, maybe they grew up in a family where everybody in the family sees the glass half empty. And so they're walking around in life where the glass is half empty to them because maybe they got born into a family like that, or maybe they're genetically predisposed to that. Sometimes pessimism is also a survival mechanism, right? People worry about what could happen and they try to prevent it from happening. But you don't, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I read your book, I interact with you, I see a congenital optimist. But what do you say to somebody that isn't?
Break the cycle. It reminds me of the story. There's a alcoholic father and he has two kids. One's an alcoholic and one's not. And they go to the alcoholic son and they say, why are you an alcoholic? And he says, because my father was. And then they go to the second son who doesn't drink and they say, why don't you drink? And he says, because my father was an alcoholic. And so, just because you grew up in a certain environment, just because you were surrounded by certain people, you can still love your family, but understand that you want a different path, or, you want to be the one to break the cycle. And that's true, I think, of pessimism, of poverty, of many things. But, frankly, it takes somebody who's courageous. It takes somebody who is resilient. And it takes somebody who, is okay trying to do things when the people they care about most probably are going to give them a hard time, make fun of them, tell them that they're being stupid or unrealistic. And so that's why it's so rare, right? I mean, how hard is it to, be successful in life and then do it while the people you care about, are basically teasing you or taunting you? It's very, very difficult. And so people who are in that situation, I don't envy, but I do think that, it is possible. It just takes somebody with the courage to do it.
So Pomp, embedded in all that though is being able to take risk on the future, right? So, I'm 24 years older than you. And so I'm supposed to be this old fuddy-duddy.
You look 15 years younger than me.
Well, there's a lot of Botox on my forehead, and Pomp, you could use a little bit of my hair tonic, which we'll talk about offline. Okay, I could straighten that whole thing that's going on. You don't want a five head Pomp in life. Just remember that. Okay, you want to keep it at a four. Okay, just remember that. Okay, we'll talk about it offline. But yeah, I got a lot of tricks that way, Pomp. You know that. But my point is that you're this young man who sees the world as it could be, and you're willing to make investments towards that end. Okay, you got the Bitcoin, I don't know, 5, 6 years before I did. Um, what do you say to somebody that has a hard time with that? What do you say to somebody that is resistant to change or is resistant to investment, thematic change, sees Apple, uses Apple every day, but can't bring themselves to buy Apple because it's a tech stock? They use Microsoft's operating system every day at the office, but yet they don't own any of it in their personal account. Or they see something like Bitcoin, this incredible technology that you and I both think are changing the world, on its way to changing the world. And they say, oh, it's worthless, it's useless. What do you say? How do you break them from that?
Well, I think one is you don't try to convince anyone of anything they don't want to do, right? You kind of get the results that you deserve. And so if you take action and you're right, you'll be rewarded. If you don't take action and you're wrong, then you'll get punished. And that's kind of how markets work in general. But also, I think that the people who end up, in my opinion, being most successful investing, building, and creating kind of their own version of what their extraordinary life is, are people who they never get mentally stuck in hardened concrete. They're constantly changing their mind. They're constantly looking for more information. They're constantly curious. And so, we were having a conversation in the office recently where I explained to someone, hey, I read something in the news. I thought it was true for years. Somebody told me that it wasn't. And so I went on this like fact finding mission. I went and I tried to read as much of the source material as I could. And I was blown away by what I read. And, what ended up happening is the news was partially right. What the person had told me was partially right, but it forced me to go and learn for myself. And so I think that there's kind of two different types of people in the world. There's a famous chess player, Josh. I think his name is Wadzik, who is thought
Yep.
to be kind
Josh
of the next
Wealthion.
Bobby
Yep.
Fischer, right?
Yep.
And he wrote this great book called The Art of Learning. And in the book, he talks about something called entity intelligence and iterative intelligence. And the idea of entity intelligence is basically your parents tell you you're winning chess games because you're smart. You're winning chess games because you are good at chess. You're winning chess games because you are a winner. But the problem is that when you lose, you then say to yourself, I'm a loser. I'm dumb, right? I'm not good at chess. And so he says those people end up not going very far in life because when they're met with adversity, they cave. Instead, the idea of iterative intelligence is when you're winning a chess game, your parents tell you you're winning because you worked hard. You're winning because you put the effort in. You're winning because you practiced and you positioned yourself correctly and you did all this. So when you come to a loss, what you say to yourself is not, I'm dumb. You say, I need to work harder. I need to put more effort in. I need to be better prepared next time. And I think that in life, you come to the iterative intelligence one of two ways. It's kind of nature versus nurture. You either kind of born that way and you happen to be in the right environment, all that kind of stuff, or you got to work really, really hard to learn that. And both can work. You just kind of figure out like, do I have the entity intelligence or do I have the iterative intelligence? If I don't have iterative intelligence, I gotta start working that way. Right. And the beauty is that with the internet and kind of all the access we have to information and people today, you can do that. But it goes back to this idea of agency. How many people really think through, do I want to change anything about my life? Do I want to improve anything about my life? And then have the discipline to go and act? Not very many people. And so I think that, it's why we as a society celebrate or kind of look for these stories where people have had extreme economic and social mobility or, radical change with health transformations, et cetera. It's because it's so rare. And a lot of people want to have that, they just don't wanna do the work to get there.
All right, we're going to open it up to questions here in a second, but I've got three quick ones for you, and so you can answer these in rapid fire. Okay, you ready?
Let's do it.
Fed rate cuts. Do you? How many you see coming?
I think the consensus is 2 more, through the end of the year, 100 basis points total. So 50's already done, 25 more twice.
But
I
that's it
don't
for the cycle. 100 basis points for the whole cycle.
No, 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 just through the end of this year. I don't know, somewhere probably end up between like 2.5 and 3.5%. And
So
I
the
think
overnight rates would be between 2.5% and 3%, which implies another 225 basis points of cuts.
something like that, probably.
200 to 200. Okay. All right. I'm in your camp on that. Okay. Recession coming?
No, recessions have been outlawed. We had a recession and they refused to acknowledge it. And so, no matter how many recessions we have in the future, they're just going to print money, suppress interest rates, and a random fake nonprofit is going to determine whether it's actually called a recession or not. So, I'm out on recessions for the foreseeable future.
Okay. So we have a tendency to use the money to sugarcoat, is what you're saying,
Yeah.
which speaks to Bitcoin. Let me be the bear for a second. Okay. And obviously I'm a bull, but let me be the devil's advocate. I bought my Bitcoin in November of 2021, Pomp, and I paid $67,000 for it. It's 3 years later, and it's at 63,000. So, am I a bear? Am I feeling bad about myself, or I don't
Well,
know? Of course, I didn't buy my Bitcoin then, so I'm actually feeling good about myself. But I want to be devil's advocate. I purchased it at the high in 21. So, how should I be feeling about Bitcoin?
I think there's a couple things. One is if you made one lump size purchase, if you want to see the kind of optimistic perspective, Bitcoin stored value for you better than the US dollar did, right? The dollar has been eroded more than even Bitcoin's price over those years. Two, I think, is if you dollar cost averaged into Bitcoin and you started buying right at the top of the last bull market, you dollar cost averaged all the way through the bear market till today, you're up significantly. And so, that lump size purchase versus a dollar cost average obviously has different results. But more importantly is, I think of Bitcoin as a savings account, right? One of the things I tell people now is like, you got a checking account and a savings account. I think Bitcoin is your savings account. I think that these stable coins or digital dollars are going to be your checking account. You're going to want to spend the dollars. You're going to want to save the Bitcoin. And so, sure, it's nice when Bitcoin goes up in dollar terms, but I very much think of Bitcoin today as 20 years from now, will it be at least worth what it is today in purchasing power terms, if not more? And if it accomplishes that, it'd probably be one of the only assets that will do that. And, there's even been periods over the last 5 years where gold has lagged inflation. And so I do think that there's this very interesting dynamic of the promise of Bitcoin being the protection of your purchasing power. Now, that doesn't help when you look at your brokerage account or your Coinbase account. You see that the dollar price is down. But let's see what happens. 90 days from now, it might be a completely different story.
Okay, let's go to audience questions. And I love your answer, by the way. What's the best advice that you would give to your younger selves? So I'll go first, okay, Pomp, because I've got a generation of perspective. I would say I needed to pay more attention to the laws of compound interest. And I would have better served myself not to be impetuously investing, but just buy a handful of incredibly good assets, whether it's Bitcoin, Nvidia, Apple, you pick the assets, whatever they may be, Astera Labs, and just hold them, SpaceX, and just hold them and not think about them anymore. You go.
I think that it is twofold. In the book I write about, luck is not real, which I think is, again, reinforces that agency idea. But for those that don't know, if Anthony and I are both walking across the street, we get hit by a bus and we both lose our leg. If you go and you talk to him in the hospital, he may say, I was so unlucky to be walking across the street at that moment. But he may then come talk to me and I may say, I'm so lucky to be alive. It's all about perspective. And so luck, really being controlled by your psychology more so than, the laws of the universe are important.
Mm-hmm.
But in hand with that, I think that fear is also something that is a mental thing. It's not a real thing, something that we, invent in our head. And so when you can get over fear of doing anything, fear of being embarrassed, fear of something not working, fear of, your friends making fun of you, fear of, losing money, whatever, it then empowers you to take action. And so once you know that luck's not real and fear is something that's invented in your head, I think it again just puts you in the driver's seat and says, hey, you can determine your outcome based on your actions.
Okay, let's go to the next question. Great answer. Do you believe we're approaching a critical point for Bitcoin, adoption, or is it too early? Manuel from California. Pomp, you take that one.
No, I think that Bitcoin is following kind of a traditional S curve, adoption, which the 0 to 10% adoption happens in the first decade. Now we're kind of in the 10 to 90% growth in the second decade. And then at some point we'll reach some sort of, mass adoption that the growth rate will peter off. But one of the best signals of adoption to me is all these Wall Street firms participating. Bitcoin is a bottoms up adoption story where normally it is kind of the militaries and nation states adopt technology first, and then it trickles down to the people. But the people adopted this asset first. And so to see Wall Street now starting to come in, see some nation states early on coming in is a pretty, I think compelling and encouraging story. So I don't know if it's a critical point as much as it is we're just following exactly what you would expect or predict if Bitcoin was to reach, kind of global adoption. What do you
Okay.
think?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's early, and I think that it's gonna get. Yogi Berra had a great line when he was a catcher his whole career. As he got older, they put him in left field, and he was making one error after the next. And he said, it gets late early out there. You know what I mean? Because he couldn't catch the shadows. Okay, and I'm going to say something to you about Bitcoin. The adoption is going to happen. Like you're going to blink and you're going to be like, okay, how did it go to 150,000? And it'll be because there was a series of decisions where people said, okay, I have to own this in my portfolio. You may have seen this BlackRock piece that's out there just talking about it being a huge diversifier. I don't know. I think it's going to get late early, meaning it's going to be adopted way more quickly than people think. And it's going to happen like that. And if you're not invested, you're going to miss it. And I remind people, if you're out of the markets for 10 of the best days of the year, you're getting a T-bill rate of return. You have to stay in something and stay patient. Okay, let's go to the next question. What's your take on the impact of CBDCs on the future of decentralized currency? That's Alex from Australia. Go ahead, Anthony.
CBDCs, I am not a fan of. Very, very scary to me. People have obviously talked ad nauseum about the surveillance of these assets. I'm more worried about things like personalized monetary policy. Everything in our life is personalized. And so how Google Maps directs your route, the music you listen to, your Google searches, all that stuff is personalized. If they have the ability to personalize monetary policy and the fact that, maybe Anthony Scaramucci's inflation rate is set at 2%, but mine is set at 4, or maybe there is some degree of devaluation, or there is other aspects of personalization. I think that while they may see it as economic solutions for problems, I think of it as kind of opening a can of worms that could be quite scary.
Well said. Let's go to the next one. Do you think markets will keep rising as rates fall and deficits worsen? Will inflation and asset prices also rise? Central question from Dennis in Texas.
I mean, that is what history suggests. Anything can happen. We've seen over the last 3 or 4 years times where bonds and stocks both went down at the same time. So you can't use history as a perfect guide. But if they are going to lower interest rates, if they are going to increase the debt, expand M2 money supply, you would expect asset prices to go up. And we're seeing that already. They call it stimulus for a reason. It stimulates asset prices. It stimulates the economy. But, again, if you just blindly follow history and don't account for new information or kind of nuance and edge cases, you can get in trouble. So I think directionally that's probably right, but let's see what happens. What do you think?
I want to think about it for a second. I think it goes up, but the stock market adjusted for inflation from 1968 to today, Anthony, is up 600%. Okay, it's up 6,800, but it's up 6 times inflation adjusted. So, yes, the assets are going to go up because there's lots of inflation and a lot of monetization of debt. The question is, what is the real value? How much is the real value going up? That's one of the reasons why I'm a big Bitcoiner, because I believe that Bitcoin is a hard asset. And as this stuff starts to accelerate, lots of money will be migrated into hard assets. There's a reason why gold in the last year has added $5 trillion to its market cap. And of course, if Bitcoin added $5 trillion to its market cap this year, it'd be at 300,000 a coin. And I'm saying it's still early for Bitcoin, but my point is there's a very large group of investors that are saying, okay, yes, this stuff's going to go up, but is it going up fast enough on an inflation adjusted real value basis? And that's the issue that I'm worried about. Let's go to another question. Is the dollar headed for a crash? What are safer investments if it does? Well, I'll go first on this one. I don't think the dollar is headed for a crash. There's too many dollarized assets around the world, and we've done too much on this show explaining that to people, that dollars are everywhere, they're owned everywhere, and they're effectively still the reserve fiat currency for the world. But I do think that Bitcoin is a good hedge. Gold is also a good hedge. I'm not saying that it isn't, but you need to have other assets besides the dollar. But I don't think the dollar is going anywhere. What say you, Pomp?
I completely agree. I think that the dollar is actually getting stronger in terms of adoption globally. People in weaker fiat currencies want dollars. Purchasing power obviously will be degraded and things like that, but I don't think the dollar is at risk in the short term.
Okay, next question. How can everyday investors best protect themselves from inflation using crypto? And is Bitcoin truly the best? Priya from the United Kingdom.
I don't know anything better, but again, we can only look at what we have today. I think that there's a monetary revolution and a technology revolution going on in crypto. Bitcoin seems to be the winner in the monetary revolution as a store of value. There's plenty of things that are trying to win the technology revolution, smart contract platforms, NFTs, many other things. But when it comes to protecting your purchasing power as an economic asset, I think that Bitcoin, seems to be the winner there.
All right, next question. See, Pomp, everybody, at the end of the day, it affects everybody, Pomp, okay? So can I tell this story? Okay, my brother is literally got like a monk spot on the back of his head. It's literally like an alien landed there and burnt it up and created a crop circle on the back of his head. And of course, I love that because he's my older brother. He didn't listen to me. He could have gone in for the PRP, which is like a sod replacement program, and it would have been fine. But he didn't listen. So, Pomp, maybe the next book we could team up together and we could write not how to live an extraordinary life, but how to look younger than you actually are with tricks, Pomp, with tricks. I can't, like when I travel, I can't have a carry-on. I need the, for my hair and beauty products. I mean, what am I going to do? Right?
Listen, I think there's a lot of people who would buy that. You look like you're like 19 years old, maybe 21 at the oldest.
Keep it up, Pomp. Flattery will get you everywhere. Okay, that should be another letter to your two children. Flatter the mooch. Get on a show every day. The title of the book is How to Live an Extraordinary Life. It's by Anthony Pompliano. It's a bestseller. It's out recently. Go buy the book. A great book, Pomp. And by the way, okay, this is a book that I've got a stack of them in my office. I hand them out to young people, and I really applaud you for writing it. I look forward to the next one.
I appreciate it very much. Thanks for having me.
If you like this video, you'll like this video as well. Check it out.